We are here today with my longtime friend Mazdack Rassi. I've known you, I was thinking about this for 32 years since I moved to Champaign.
Wow.
32 years. You were 16 years old, I was 15 years old.
Right.
As long as I have known you, you've been into fashion. As long as I've known you. Your mom was working at Cranner doing, partly in the fashion department.
Yep. Costumes.
As long as I've known you, you've done fashion. And somehow, some way, you stuck with it and made that your life.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't get to do that.
Right.
They quit along the way. Just because you love something doesn't mean it always works. And people always say, go get what you love. But people sometimes do, and sometimes people don't. So do you consider yourself lucky, or do you consider yourself? Did you expect that? Because you went from nothing in Champaign.
Yeah.
For a lot of people that don't know, you went to New York with absolutely nothing. In fact, you didn't finish school. You didn't go the traditional route, and you just went.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's a really good point. I never think about it, but I think what happens is that it's when we're younger, it doesn't really matter what age you are, but when you think younger, you have this dream or something resonates with you, right? So for me, kind of style, fashion, that world of like sort of aesthetics really resonated with me. And then I realized that what usually happens is along the way, like hundreds of people try to talk you out of your dream. So I think for me, it was just that I just kept going and I didn't allow people to like screw up my plan or like ruin my dream, and so if I was in an environment that wasn't like conducive to where I needed to go, I knew I had to change my environment. Hence why I like realized I had to leave Champaign and just do whatever I had to do to go with people who kind of share in that dream, which for me, New York City was the capital of all of that. So I just had, it's not like you build a plan, you're just like subconsciously planning and you just do it. Like, I never had a master plan. I just had a North Star.
That's what I was gonna say. I don't remember you ever having a plan. I'm gonna go to New York, and then I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna get a job with this industry. It was from what I remember, you just left.
Yeah,
you really just left without a. You just went.
So a few things. Like I said, I didn't have a plan. I just had a North Star, right? Like something was calling me, and then. The other thing is that like ignorance is kind of bliss. Like if you have too much of planning or you try to like figure it all up, you'll be disappointed. You just have to go with your guts, go with your instinct, and kind of like bounce around, and eventually you find yourself in that environment, and then you can release, and then there are phases. It's not like one long journey.
You said something that was so important, especially with hopefully young people listening to this and trying to find some inspiration. You said 100 people tried to talk you out of it and tell you why something isn't going to work.
Yeah.
This is something I think about all the time.
Yeah.
So why do some people ignore that noise, and some people get fixated on that noise and listen to all that?
So I think
How did you block it out? Let me just say it that way. How did you block it out?
I always had this weird feeling, and probably why I had to leave school, like where there was structure, where there were plans or ideas set up already for me, like I went the other way. Like I couldn't deal with the conformity.
Structured.
Yeah. So like school, unfortunately to me, especially because it didn't, the school here wasn't specialized in like liberal arts thinking, fashion, design, art.
Yeah.
It was a very structured school. So like I just bounced right off of it. I remember the day I realized that the key to life was not figuring out what you wanted to do, but like what you didn't want to do. It was more of a process of elimination.
Interesting. I
Right?
that one.
So soon as you kind of come up,
yeah,
you know, like kind of like between your late teens when you're graduating from high school until like 20 something,
yeah.
everyone's telling you
What to do?
have you thought about what you want to do? Have you thought about what you want to do? No one says like, have you thought about what you don't want to do? Right? So for me, it was like I really like I never wanted to wear a suit to work. So like that took out financial services.
Interesting.
I was like I knew like I didn't want to go into an industry where I had to get in line and work my way up. Like that I could just jump.
Corporate setting.
Yeah, the corporate setting. And I knew I didn't want to go to the medical or science field, so it was more about like liberal arts thinking. It was about art and design, and it was like a little bit of like social justice, like where you could make a difference in the world. Like if you think differently and you could create differently, then that could have resonate effects. Hence later, I find it so interesting, I ended up in the beauty industry because that world, for 40, 50 years, people have said, like, what is beauty, right? Who is beautiful, who's not? And like, we get to mess with that now. That's a deeper conversation, but it's like, so for me, it was like, okay, I knew all these things I didn't want to do. So then, and it took about like from 20 to 25, it was like, just concentrate on me, like what is this guy about, right? Because you can't figure out what you want to do in your life unless you kind of know who you are. So that process of elimination only can come by you kind of like making yourself your project and going like, who's this person? Like,
I love that.
What is this? Who is this? Psyche and like what interests this person? And so and that's the time when most kids are graduating from college and they have to find a job. Like they don't even turn around and go, who's this?
Yeah, they're just gone.
Right? So when I speak a lot at, especially Parsons, the university I'm on the board of, I always tell the students, like your number one project is you. Your number one job in life is you. Figure out who you are and figure it out early because you can't, those are they're foundational, right?
Yeah.
And you can't build a building or a skyscraper on top of you if you don't have a strong foundation. Those will all crumble.
Absolutely.
Or, that's what they call midlife crisis.
Absolutely.
Like people get really successful and they crash.
Who am I? Like, what did I do? Yep.
Yeah.
What am I doing?
So I think like all that needs to be done up front. And because I dropped out of school, I didn't have those structural elements to be like, this is what you do, then you go find a job, then you get better at your job, then you get a promotion. It was like, I was in New York City, I was 22, I had no money, and I realized I'm just gonna work on myself for a few years. And by the time I was 25, I realized, okay, this is kind of like the core idea of what I want to do. It's creative field. It was like working and being around creative genius and people who were making things. And when you're in New York, you get that at the highest level, right? If you could work with a photographer, he could be the biggest photographer in the world. So I was in the right environment, and then I started to kind of zone in. From like 20 to 25, I just kind of honed in what industries I wanted to be in, which ended up being like content creation, media around fashion, right? So we were the ones who, my dream was that we would be the ones who create all the media and content and campaigns and fashion and communication for these amazing genius fashion designers.
One of the things that I like talking about people, especially at the time that, success is a continuation. So you sit here today, people would say you're incredibly successful, but in your mind, you might be just on that regular path, because it's a continuation thing. Success is not like a stopping point, and it's like, okay, I'm done. It's like,
Yeah.
But anyway, along that line of getting to where you're at right now, which the way that normally America and people look at you, like incredibly successful, okay.
Yeah.
And that's what they see. What they don't see is the 25 years and the 20 some years prior to this. When you're grinding, I saw some of that.
Yeah.
I didn't know all of it, but I saw some of that. Was there any point along that journey the initial 10 years, 5
Yeah,
years,
yeah.
that you thought, what the heck am I doing? Like, is this gonna work? Because
Yeah.
maybe some doubt creeped in, or were you
All the time.
all the time?
I mean, that's the fuel, right? Like, you just get hit, you hit a wall, you think this just sucks, and you're never gonna get there.
What do you do then? When those moments
I
of
was
doubt?
very good at, just like I was good at turning off people that didn't like believe in me or try to talk me out of my ideas. I did it to myself. You are no different than someone on the outside telling you you can't do it.
Fair.
So you got to look at yourself and be like, you're just another voice. But I would like but I couldn't leave me. You know, like you could walk away from everybody else that is not helpful to your progress, but you can't walk away from you. So you have to work on you. So I would go through these lulls where you go down and you just really beat up, and then you come back, and then the city I was in really helped me build myself back up. Like whenever I was down, all you had to do in New York was walk out the door and walk in the same footsteps as Andy Warhol and Basquiat and Calvin Klein and Ralph Lauren, because that city is like this incredible ball of energy. So you can go to the Met Museum, you can go to MoMA, you could go see a show.
That was inspirational.
Yeah,
for
you can just
or
go. Yeah, you can just go sit in Central Park, and go, you know, the greatest people in the world sit in the very same bench. So that environment really does foster. Like,
Was it more like when you think about those people? Is it more that you walk in the same steps that, hey, they're just a human being. They wear shoes, they wear
Exactly.
pants, they eat, they sleep.
used
What's so different about them? That
I used to do this thing. I used to listen to the Bob Marley song, "The Cornerstone," and then I would walk up to like the greatest buildings in Manhattan, and you touch the cornerstone. Like someone built this thing, right? Probably some like, you know, the Vanderbilt family, the Kennedys, Rockefellers, you know, and you could touch all that, and that would build you up. I mean, the energy's there, right? It's like 9 million people, and the greatest minds in the world have crossed and built things in New York City. So New York City was a huge inspiration.
That's
for
incredible.
me.
That's really great. Now, your focus is Milk Makeup.
Yeah.
So, you know, you did the studio, you still have the studios, LA and New York, and I think you're doing something in Europe. I don't know if you're still doing that, but anyway, but now it seems like your energy is it seems to me that your energy is Milk Makeup right now.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, like for the last 20 years, we've built Milk Studios and all of its
The
like
brand.
services and the brand, but ultimately we were a B2B business for 20 years, right? Our clients were American Express, Ralph Lauren, Calvin Klein. We work with our biggest clients, Victoria's Secret, our biggest client, you know, so we work business to business. And I didn't realize at the time when we decided to create Milk Makeup that we were going to be one of the few businesses in the world that was going to go from B2B enterprise
To
to
retail.
B2C consumer, right? And I had no idea how difficult that was going to be. So like, again, it's like ignorance is bliss. So you just go for it.
Because if you analyze it too much, you might have not done it.
There was no way I would have done it
absolutely.
if I knew how difficult it was
Yeah.
and how much capital I would need. Like, so no idea. We just kind of went in. We knew we had resources, but no idea that we would have to do much more. And so we go in it, and because our point of view and our brand had a specific sort of like idea, which was really like Milk had for 20 years that's fostered the next generation of photographers, creatives, fashion designers. So we kind of like applied that same philosophy to makeup, which was like, this makeup is for the next generation of girls and guys, black and white, big and small, and it was going to be this inclusive brand that was going to redefine what the concept of beauty was.
There was a mission behind this.
Yeah, and because we come from creating content, we've been working with other beauty brands for 20 years. I read this really great article once, and it said that the last 40 years, pretty much every beauty makeup company had created makeup and sold it and created advertisement by making people feel ugly. right? Like you put a supermodel, you put this like
right.
unbelievable girl that is
Right,
0.0001% of the population,
That's right.
and no girl ever looks up and goes, "I'm gonna look like Giselle."
Yeah, right.
They're gonna go, "I just want to use what she's using, but I will never look like her." So we decided, being Milk, we could have had a supermodel, we could have had celebrities, we could have had all of that. We decided we're gonna do it differently. We're gonna use normal girls.
Yeah.
They were gonna be like, you know, so we started doing street casting, and we found people. There was boys, girls. We did this shot with two people kissing, and when you looked at it, you couldn't tell if it was two boys, a girl boy, or two girls. And we put it up, and we were with our retailer Sephora, and Sephora's looking at the shot, and we're like, we're gonna launch the products with this image, and it was just this beautiful kiss, and we were like, we're gonna launch our product with this love, this just. And I could just see them looking at this photo like, is that two girls? Is that a guy and a girl? Is that two? And they never asked the question. But we launched with it. And so we did it a little bit differently. And I think that's really our mission. So 20 years of our sort of, you know, ability to create content really helped us. The community we built helped launch it. But, you know, and then we started selling makeup to, you know, girls.
Clearly, culture is important. You were mentioning that I picked up on this. You said that you spent about 15 minutes with all the new hires.
Yeah.
And you're obviously very busy, but to be able to do 15 minutes with every new hire, and you find that important because that speaks to what you're talking about because of the importance of that people really understand the mission, the culture, and whatnot, and you do that 15 minutes to.
Yeah, and I take them out of the, so I do it more in the studio. So I make the makeup hires. It doesn't matter if it's a receptionist, if they are, you know, the lady who cleans the desks at night, or they're my CMO or CFO or anyone in the middle, right? They the minute they get hired, usually it's within the first 3 days, they leave the makeup offices, come up to the studios, to my other offices at the top, so they can see all the other parts of Milk. And we have coffee or tea, and I tell them about 20 years of history. I tell them, you know, you're not working for Milk Makeup, you're working for Milk. And we are 11 companies in 2 cities, and you know, we're about 240 employees total. And makeup is only about 70 employees, but in 3 years it's 70.
A lot. Yeah.
And I say to them, you know, you need to learn what the other parts of the company do. This is our history, this is our trade, this is our culture, this is what we're known for. And don't ever forget, you know, we come from New York City. So, and I always talk to them about, you know, we need to expand and scale our business, but we can never lose our point of view and where we come from and the values that this company has. So it's great. It's something that I learned when I read what other great CEOs or, you know, other leaders.
Do you think, so I want to talk about family a little bit. So you got married 12 years ago, I think, ish, around that or something like that. But then you recently had twins. Yeah. And all of a sudden you're from this professional Mazda identity being fashion and, you know, whatnot of Mr. New York.
Yeah.
But now you've got to be a dad.
Yeah.
Tell me about first of all, was it an easy transition? Because you did have kids later.
Yeah.
And then you did a lot of,
So I think us having kids later, like I was, you know, 44, right? So 43.
43,
really helped because, you know, you're just much more grounded.
Yeah.
And I think what I thought was, it's really funny. It's like, I say this a lot. Like when they were born, I was in the hospital. I was like, I'm never going back to work. This is it. Like nothing else mattered, right? And within about a week, I was like, I'm going to work.
Wow.
And I started going to work super early.
Wow, okay.
And I realized like I'm working for them.
Yeah.
You know. So
well, it helped you got motivated.
yeah, I used to work for me, now I'm working for them.
Okay.
And then I got motivated. But what happened is I cut all the garbage out. Like any dinners.
What you didn't want.
All the stuff, yeah. So again, it's like you go through this process. Like what we did is we started getting really, really like, you know, efficient with our time. I realized like I did cut a lot of friends out. I was just like, you know, you just start cutting all the BS out of your life. So if someone would just call you and be like, you know, hey, let's just go have a drink. You're like, no, I'd rather spend time with my family. I think what's interesting is that you know, in our profession, I mean, we're out to dinner 3 nights a week, having dinner with clients, you know, having dinner with other people, and so we're out all the time. So now those dinners become very important because, you know, we have to get a nanny. We're not with our girls, so. And then what ends up happening is you start to learn how to turn work off on the weekends and just, you know.
Does that come easy?
No, it's hard because my work and yours, it wasn't separate. Like, it's in our lives, you know, like CarX for you was you were the guy, and all your family was involved in it. So like, that's actually very healthy. Like, people who kind of clock out and go home, you know, in our situation, it's like milk is everywhere. It's always going on. I just now know, I brought in people now into the company that allow me not to deal with it on the weekends, you know. So what I did was I really looked around myself and I said, there's a lot of great leadership here that I've just been like, let them come up and let them, and I read this great article, I don't know if it was Jeff Bezos. Oh no, it was somebody. It was one of the great, you know, CEO leaders, and he said, "I had the best year of my life in the company. I didn't have to make one decision." Right? And I thought to myself, "That's amazing." Like, I always thought leadership meant making decisions, but it was just like, really, leadership is bringing in great people, right? And Jack Ma wrote this thing that I loved, and I always said. He said, don't find the best people for the job, find the right people for the job. Because there's a lot of times where we have headhunters, we go get me the best CMO, get me the best this. And you realize, like, no, give me the right one that's culturally connects to the company, that is they can work with the people around them. Yeah. So once I started thinking that way, I started to really bring people up, and then it let me kind of be able to check out a little bit.
A couple more questions. So, do you think identity? So, it's something I think all about is identity. When I think of you, just by the nature of your work, you're in the public, okay? It's impossible for your Mazda identity to not be too much wrapped up with the professional Mazda. When people see you, you know, especially if they don't know you, they're asking you, how's the makeup, you know, how's the studio, you know, but Mazda is more than that. Your identity isn't just milk, but it somehow becomes that.
Yeah.
Do you think it's important to separate that, or do you view yourself as one holistic identity, as a dad, as a husband, as a guy who's just running a company, or do you get a little jammed up with the fact that Mazda is milk?
It's a great question. I think you just have, I've seen people where they have a work personality and they have a personal personality, and I think it's healthier to just be you. And to be you, like, you know, to speak to a leadership or someone in your company the same way you speak with your family and your, like, it's easier.
Definitely easier.
You know, and you don't have to, like, switch between personalities. I don't think that's healthy. I mean, there's times where, like, you know, I have to give a speech, I use words that are differently, but ultimately it's always me. And I think that is really, really important, and you know, and it's easier on you, so you don't have to, like, switch between people internally, and just be you. And I think that you know, it also makes the business healthier because, you know, Jack Welch always said, he's like, the most important thing to business is, you know, build a friendship and then do business. Build a relationship and then do business. And the great leaders that came before us, like, their word meant everything because they had relationships, right? So it was like a handshake. It was like, we're doing this, and then they did it. So I always felt like I couldn't build a relationship with a client or a retailer today unless I was me. Like, they knew they were talking to me.
Yeah.
And I think it's a little bit easier when you're, like, a founder and you're head of a company, because I have CEOs and other people who run businesses for us. They could be a little bit more business, but I always find it that when they want to talk to me, it's usually personal, business personal, that they just want to look at you in the eye and know like you're not gonna screw them, or that you have that the head guy
Right.
is going to have their back in a decision they make, right?
Finally, a topic that I think about all the time. It's a word that's thrown around all the time. It means something different for everybody. You know, I just recently published a book, The Perfect Pain, and I talk about a lot of my struggles that ultimately led to a lot of great successes for me personally on a professional level, but a lot of them weren't grounded in the right reasons why I did it. And I'll get back to what I'm talking about here. We're talking about grit, okay? Mm-hmm. And what grit meant for me was I realized later that I had a lot of shame being an immigrant from Iran. I moved around a bunch. It wasn't the greatest thing to be an Iranian in the 80s in the United States as the same time that you came. And I believe that I had a lot of my reasons that I wanted to be successful, and because I misconstrued the success with trying to ward off my shame of being poor, of being an immigrant, okay? I would put in the class with someone with a lot of grit. But your grit may come from differently, so I don't want to put words in your mouth. What does grit mean to you, and how much effect did it have into your success? Kind of an edge that you maybe had somewhere deep down, or was there?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really great word to use. I mean, for me, that word is, correlates to like hunger. Like I had the hunger. I never had the hunger to like, for money. It's so funny, this student asked me the other day, this was about a few months ago, and he's like, your success, there was that word success, right? And he said, what's success? Like, how much money do you need to make? And I was like, I don't know. Yeah. I was like, I'll tell you what success is for me. I said, I've never had to go to work in 23 years.
You never what?
I've never gone to work in 23 years.
Oh, yeah.
I love what I do. Yeah. It's not work. I get up in the morning, I walk through the halls of a company or a business or a brand that I may help make. Lots of people help make it. I was like, so for me, like that grit was never, it was just like, how do I just get to a place that I'm gonna be like, leave something behind? Like someone said to me the other day, they said, milk in New York City it's an establishment, 23 years of creativity, right? And I was like, that's the greatest, that's it. Like, if we leave tomorrow, there's gonna be a lot of kids who got their start in the creative industries that came through our doors, and we made a difference in the toughest town. So for me, it was like that hunger to kind of like do something that was, institutional.
But you think about that hunger, like you lived in the apartments at Orchard Downs. For those of you who don't know, it's
student housing. It's
student housing, basically, and you were living there when you were 15, 16 years old, you didn't have anything.
Yeah.
Didn't play a role in anything?
No, it did. Well, we all, that hunger came from, we had to make do with what we had, which wasn't much. But the greatest asset we all had was our imagination, right? I always say this I will be sitting in a meeting, people will be like, oh, we can't do that. That's like over the budget. And I'll be like, dreaming is free. We should dream big.
Yeah.
Right? So my grit was all in my head. I was always successful in my head. I was always like, I used to dream like I was the biggest fashion designer, the biggest movie person. I just dream, and like my goal was, how do I take that and make that as close as possible to reality? So and there's a lot of people in the creative industry that really talk about this. It is literally like looking at this dream in your head and really believing that it's real. And somehow it starts coming out of you, right? So we always say, like, you always go where your nose is, where you the way you look, you always end up going there. So you might as well look at greatness, because even if you don't get there like all the way, you get there halfway, it's like you still did so much. So I was a dreamer. I mean, and no one could talk me out of that dream. That it was reality for me.
You made it, Yeah, yeah, I totally understand that, and I know exactly what you're talking about. Last thing, so you have an 18-year-old kid, and this is the 18-year-old Mazda, and says, I'm dropping out of school, and I'm just going to go to New York, and I don't have a clue what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
What advice do you give that kid now, the 48-year-old Mazda? What advice do you give them?
I think it's the same. I think you just, you know, don't let people talk you out of it. Like, you know, I used to always say, like, what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
You know, you get on another flight, you come home, you know, it's like, oh, I didn't make it. But you will always remember that trip and that moment you went. And we always talk about this in New York, because I look at my employees who are all young, and I'm like, I was like, you guys are all living in New York now. You know, maybe you have 5 to an apartment. You're in New York. But you were that kid in Ohio a few years ago that made the journey. Like, remember that. And there's 1,000 other kids that are right now thinking about, like, do I go? You know? And you guys did it, you know? But we can never forget, like, where we come from.
Yeah.
So I don't, you know, I say to each his own. I can't tell them to make the journey. I just, you know, some will, some won't. And some will.
Most won't.
Most won't. Most won't. And the question is, it's like, it's not for everyone, but you only have one life to live. And, you know, I knew it wasn't for me. Like, I knew, like, I was not going to sit around and be like 30, 40 years old and think about, oh, I should have. You know, what was the worst that could happen? You know, it's one American Airlines flight back. You know,
Well, my friend, to dreaming, I couldn't be more proud to be your friend, and I can't be more proud to have just watched what you've done with your career, your family, your children, and I can't wait to see where it goes from now. Thank you for being with me today. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.